welcome to another episode of Marc and Elmer's PSI, Piano Scene Investigations. Glad you're here with us today. We have much to talk about, lots of things happening in the news concerning the piano world. Apparently, let's see, I noticed the 2 links you sent me this week. Yuja Wang had her Carnegie Hall recital. And what a program that was.
Very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. She had some Scriabin, she had some Messiaen, she had, what else was there? I don't even remember anymore, but it was quite an interesting program. Lots of modern things in it. I also liked her encores. The encores was interesting. She did, I noticed that she added another Chifra piece to her already growing Chifra repertoire. She did the Chifra arrangement of the Blue Danube, which is that one's quite a bear too. I mean, I don't see very many that would be easy, to tell you the truth. So, if you are born today is the 15th?
Alexa, what's today's date?
It's Thursday, May 16th.
16th.
Oh, it is the 16th.
Yeah.
So if you are born today, you have the same birthday as Liberace.
Hooray.
Hooray. So, you said you know some stories about Liberace?
Well, you guys, do you know who Liberace was? Remember I told you in a recent course that Jin, my South Korean guitar colleague at Cyprus, taught a course in rock and roll. It was for, the whole university kind of thing, music appreciation. And he said, well, this is going to be really fun because we get to start this whole course with Elvis. And at least half the class was blank. Now, this is in Turkish culture in Cyprus, but also younger people, But he said, you guys do know who Elvis was? No, sir.
Oh, boy.
Well, you're going to by the time we get done with him. And, of course, everybody loved Elvis and everything. But, Elvis, originally, he just wore pretty much ordinary clothes, right? But later on, he got into the rhinestones, the sequins, and all this stuff. And you know who taught him how to dress that way? Famously. Liberace. Liberace was quite a bit older than Elvis, but not that much older. But Elvis was a young 20, maybe something, and Liberace was at least 10 years or more his senior. But there's a famous time when they got together in the same recording area, something like that. And I mean, different studios and stuff. But Liberace sat down and advised him about clothes. He said, it really can make a difference in terms of, the appeal and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
then a really funny part was apparently at some point musicians will do this.
Yeah.
Elvis took the piano and Liberace took the guitar and they There were no recording sessions of that because Liberace says, well, you play the piano damn well better than I can play the guitar. But then Elvis said, oh no, Mr. Lee or something, I think they used to call it. No, I can't play the piano like you can. But Liberace was born in Milwaukee, I believe. He was born in Wisconsin. And, well enough to do-ish middle-class family. He had a son, very famously, if you guys remember, my brother George. I wish my brother George were here. But they put him through good piano lessons. I think he went to the conservatory in Milwaukee. I'm not sure that he ever went. I don't think he went to the university or anything like that because pretty much by the time he was done, he had to kind of get out there and start working. But actually, when he was a teenager, he found, like young people tend to do, he loved going off to the clubs and playing in the place. But I mean, this guy had an Oscar Peterson-like technique. Oscar Peterson, the famous black Canadian, by the way, origin, jazz pianist, was also classically trained. He had a Hungarian piano teacher. Talked about how he learned the Chopin etudes and everything like that. But that guy had fingers. Holy crap. But Liberace started working like that, and then he was growing up in a time when they had the bands and everything in the 30s and 40s, and he got into that. by the time he was in his 40s, because I think he was born like around late teens in the 1900s. So I think he was getting up there for military service age.
Yeah.
Because he never did that. But, the guy had an extraordinary career. I have a book of some of his music. This is, again, my father's copy.
Oh, yeah.
But some arrangements of Liberace's, they're quite good. I've learned some of them, played them. And I even dressed one up even more than he had it.
Uh-huh.
But it says a lot of different things, quotes and stuff on that book. And it said, President Truman's favorite pianist.
Oh, wow.
And he was. A lot, of course, with a lot of older stars. He was really famous in Las Vegas. He had a big show at the something with the word river or water in it. The casino. No, I actually went to that casino. It's subsequently been torn down now, but anyway, I never saw him perform live, but he did, of course, television specials.
Oh yeah, he did.
And he'd had a very popular TV show in the 1950s for a few years.
He always did a show.
Very entertaining shows, really good. And come on, the guy could play. And then he would do these kind of like supersonic kind of things, like supersonic boogie woogie, different things. That's not what he called it, but. And I remember there was one Las Vegas show they did where he invited people to come. He did this probably more than once, but the cameras to come into his home in Las Vegas. And
what?
Just the antiques and it was plush. It was full. He was showing off some desk that belonged to Louis the 15th or 14th, whatever like that. The bed that he had belonged to one of the late Russian czars.
Oh.
This guy had so much money.
I thought it was going to be in the shape of a piano.
Decades. Well, he did that famously, the piano-shaped pool.
Oh, he did?
He had a piano-shaped pool. But I think that was in California. He had several homes. When I, years ago, I went to Las Vegas. I had really no desire to go to a place like that, I thought. It's kind of like, that's not my cup of tea. But my violin friend, Norman Paolo, who had played for 29 years, I think, for the Parardi Quartet, and then had a career for more than 45 years in strict quartet playing. The fellow that he had work on his violin, and I think the one that he still had at that time was an Amati. It was worth $500,000 at least. It's one of the Amatis were a slightly bigger violin, good, rich, chocolatey sound. But the fellow that worked on it was from Salt Lake City. There's some very good violin or string people out in the West. I think part of that too. In fact, Norman's son, I put a little plug in for him, Eric Paulu, Paulu. He's a bow maker and quite well known for it. Makes string bows.
Huh.
Beautiful work. Does, of course, gorgeous woodwork. He does side projects and things and puts them up on Facebook, and they're really lovely. But Norman had a summer home. I think that's where he now still lives, in Tucson. His original summer home was in Allens Park, Colorado, where he would go in the summertime because members of the faculty up there taught and performed at this summer festival area up in near Estes Park in Allens Park, Colorado. Kind of north central area above, farther up above Boulder and stuff. Not quite as far as Fort Collins, but anyway. Norman and his partner Judy were going to go to Europe, I think, for a while, and he found out that his violin repairman, fixer guy, every year he did a vacation in Las Vegas. His family, he and his wife got married, and they had 2 kids, and the grandkids, and there were 2 sets of grandparents. One set was from the East Coast, and one set was from the West Coast. And they'd all decided for some years, once the boys were born, to meet in Vegas once a year for a week, and they could all, spend time as a family. They were staying at the Venetian, I think. Is that where? What was the one called? No, Mirage. They were in the Mirage. That's where the lion tamer guys used to be with the volcano fire. Siegfried and Roy. So he came to me and he said, "I'll pay you $400 for your expenses and stuff. This should cover, a couple of nights at a hotel, and, gas and so forth, things like that. A little bit of fun time." This is 25 years ago or something, so it was a while back. So $400 was still $400.
Yeah.
But he said, I'd like you to take my violin up to Las Vegas and give it to the guy.
Wow.
And Norman and I were very good buddies, good friends. He'd been my chamber music mentor in my master's program in Madison, and when I graduated, he came in and he said to me, "Why don't you come by sometime and we'll play the Brahms sonatas together?" He'd coached me in the Brahms C minor trio, piano trio, and then we did quite a bit of playing together different times after that. It was a great compliment for me that a magnificent violinist like Norman would
invite you over.
Well, to play with him, My teacher Howard played with Norman, it's that kind of thing. Highly decorated. The Priority Quartet at one time was nominated. I don't know if they won it, but they were one of 4 or 5 string quartets. I don't know, it was just the United States or all over the world, nominated for the Toscanini Prize. The Priority Quartet, it's still in residence, all different members now in Wisconsin. Been there since 1939. Anyway, I took the violin, and Norman was such a funny guy. He said, "Now, this thing is insured, so don't get all whacked up about it, but I put a car covered up carefully to make sure nobody's going to see it immediately," right, like that. He said, "It's insured for $600,000, $650,000, something like that." He had 2 violins. He had one that began with a B. It was an even earlier one with a really fat belly and a fat back that he would play sometimes. Beautiful sweet Bach on it. And then he would play the Amati with what he called his Brahms bow. I'm not sure if that's the one that Eric made for him or not, but wow. It was beautiful sound, beautiful playing. But I was a little nervous. But then he made a typical Norman joke. He said, "Now, just in case we don't see each other again, and you decide to run off to Mexico with my violin, I want half of what you get for it." That was Norman. He's still alive down there in Tucson. But I took it to Las Vegas and stayed at this 1950s kind of hotel. I can't remember the names of these places now, but it's across from Circus, but now it's gone. And in place of all that stuff right there, where both Liberace had his shows originally, and where I stayed, that's all been leveled down. And the guy, what's his name, who owns Las Vegas, built his newest massive casino hotel thing and everything. So that stuff's all gone. But it was cool because, real quickly, I had the violin and I put it under the bed in my hotel room.
All right.
And it was so hot. Oh my God, it's so hot in Vegas. I think people probably sleep during the day and get up late afternoon and stay up all night long and stuff, because Vegas is a night town. Wow. Big time. All morning long. But it was kind of cool. I thought, okay, I'm here, and I got checked in and everything. And he said, and I didn't want to get trapped in the room because I wasn't going to see the guy till lunchtime next day.
Right.
So I put the thing under the bed, shoved it in there, and I went out for a walk and stuff. And so some things that I saw when I was there was really cool. I got the books here. I went to, the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA.
Okay.
And, the famous one is the Frank Lloyd Wright Museum in New York, where you go all the way up and then you walk down to the spiral like that. There's also one in Venice, No, I'm not the Museum of Modern Art. The Guggenheim, right?
Guggenheim, okay.
Where's the Museum of Modern Art? I forget. Anyway, shit, I don't remember. At the moment, I'm talking off my head. Well, the Guggenheims, didn't they create the Museum of Modern Art? Because it is the Museum of Modern Art. Frank Lloyd Wright is. So they have like 5 or 6 sites in the world. Right. Las Vegas is one. There's one in New York. There's one in Venice. There's one in South America somewhere. I'm not sure. So there's only 5 or 6. But the newest one was in Vegas. And they had 2 really amazing exhibitions. I found out that it was there. I don't think I went that first night. But I made a point to go because the entrance wasn't very expensive. You could do really cool stuff in Vegas on the cheap or not too pricey. You know, there's the famous, what's it called, the shrimp cocktail for $1.
Yeah.
At Binion's, the old famous 19th century place is still there. That $10 steak dinner with everything. But it's massive.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
But so what they had 2 different shows, and one was really cool because nobody had seen this art for almost 100 years. It was impressionist treasures from the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. Now, until the Soviet Union collapsed, and then sometime after that, that stuff had been locked up there since the 19th century when these wealthy Tsarist period Russians had gone and bought and collected art in Paris. And it belonged to them personally, but of course it didn't want the Soviets, because they took everything and made it state property and put it in, sometimes it was given to the Hermitage Museum. But it was really cool to see this stuff, especially because there was a smallish portrait painting of Cézanne. Wow. And it was rather darkish the way it was done. But the cool thing about a lot of it, most of the paintings, was the frames that they were in. Because this is apparently what caused such a big uproar originally in Paris when the Impressionists first had their shows. The people, they had those kind of like Baroque 18th century-ish, kind of thick, and 3-dimensional kind of creating space frames around the pictures, around the paintings. Some of them were, and they just recycled old frames. They took them off other paintings, and made them fit to their paintings and stuff like that. And apparently what shocked the people was this was like the very first opening of an Impressionist thing. They had found that they weren't getting really good gallery time at the time, the beginning of the movement. And so 25 of them or so got together and rented space, and they did their own exhibition. It was the first one. And Gertrude Stein talked about that. She wrote about it. She went to it and said what an incredible event it was, because the people were in absolute shock, was almost scandalized, because they went in to see all this painting, and with assumptions about what painting was about. And then they saw the very familiar frames, but then they looked inside what was in the frame, and they got, holy shit, what the hell is that? And then that thing I talked about before, that monologue play that Pat Carroll did, Gertrude Stein, she imitates some of the things in her kind of way of writing. But with the Matisse painting, he says, but what is that green on her nose, on her nose, on her nose?
Oh, God.
Well, I suppose it's some kind of green, I suppose. So I saw that, and then totally cool, on the other side of the museum, they have 2 exhibition spaces, was the history of Harley Davidson motorcycles in America. And then they also had some earlier ones, like the Chieftain, or whatever it was called. Indian motorcycles. But let's put it this way, it was sponsored by Harley Davidson, and it was the history of motorcycles from America, pretty much the beginning. And they had all these motorcycles. Amazing. I mean, just from basically nowadays, we're going back, I saw some 2 kind of chubby kids that could better use regular bicycles, but then the electric ones. Yeah. When I was out driving yesterday, I thought this boy's should have real bicycles.
Yeah.
They don't
I'm
do
not
that.
sure, but I think the Harley Davidson actually have a line of motorcycles
Yeah.
called the Valkyries.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, anyway, I'm talking a lot here. This is all about Liberace. Because what I was going to get to.
Yeah.
The other thing that I visited was the Liberace Museum in Las Vegas. And it was, pretty interesting. It was privately run, and this was interesting. He didn't have any children. Liberace was gay, but he played that down. And also fought some press in England in the later 50s that had suggested something. And I'm not sure when they passed the laws that changed. That Oscar Wilde was in prison for a while because of being homosexual. And they didn't change those laws, I think, until the 70s in England.
Uh-huh.
But he fought it and he won. Actually, he won a significant award for England. He didn't need the money, but he took it. And what he wanted was people to stay out of his private life.
Right.
I think with the furs and the jewels and everything, a lot of people. But it was weird because he appealed to the middle class people, and they just, that's his shtick.
Yeah.
That's his shtick. Wow. That bed with the furs and stuff that belonged to the Tsars, no way would it. I'm sorry. I don't mean this in a fit. Come on. I've got a really great gay friend.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. You have to agree that you wouldn't expect that kind of fluffy, foofy, over-the-top style to be in a straight man's bedroom. Anyway, there was a private society which supported his memory and kept the museum going.
Right.
I did not. I played a few notes on it. Some kid sat down and tried to play the famous Baldwin with the mirrors on it.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Sadly, the piano was just a wreck. Not in tune, not in kept. It wasn't kept out. Now I subsequently learned part of this. In the whole thing, when you go to a restaurant, which, let's say you guys in the East Coast, you definitely know what I'm talking about, New Jersey, parts of New York, but New Jersey, okay? And over here in the Midwest, we got some stuff like that here in Ohio, but definitely up around Chicago and southern Wisconsin places, where those guys tended to hang out, the overplush kind of furniture and dark wood and the lights and all this, and the whole, cocktail bars, but that kind of 1950s, 1960s, smoking and drinking and not all legal kind of stuff.
Right.
I'm going to get him by his bad side there.
I don't think so.
Going to the Liberace Museum, it felt a little like that, like you were stepping back
in time
into this, in time. It felt, there was new stuff that had been there since he'd been doing his shows, but it felt like one of those old steakhouse, clubhouse kind of restaurants that when you go on vacation in Wisconsin and you go around a corner and there's one there, and it's been there since the 40s and the heydays with the 50s and 60s, and they're still there and people still go. The food hasn't changed. The mixed drinks haven't changed. They're still the original recipes and stuff. It kind of felt like that, and then it was a little disappointing because it just seemed a little. Yeah. Well, I just learned that in the news, I think it happened after COVID. Not exactly sure when, but you look it up. They permanently closed the Liberace Museum.
They permanently?
Yeah, because basically the support group for him went defunct. They didn't have the money anymore to do it. This guy was as rich as Midas in his time. I don't know what happened to all the money, but the saddest part when I was there, I went to see that house that was featured because I found out the address and everything, and I went to see the house that he showed off in that TV show with all his beautiful home. It has a Moroccan terracotta tile stuff and sunroof kind of things open at the top, probably for the boys to throw off their clothes and do their thing in the sunshine, and nobody was going to care because it was technically inside the house up on the roof. It was a very interesting, wonderful house, as you'd expect. Mansion, come on.
Yeah.
It was closed, it was locked up, there were some fencing and gates around it, and it was derelict. It looked bad. It's amazing how you take the life away from a place, how quickly it just, by its very nature, and it was in a decent neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably still there because it was Liberace's mansion. And I don't know what they did with it, but by the time I was there in Vegas, it had been not open and not used.
Yeah.
I thought I read that somebody was interested in buying it, but then some other people were thinking of buying it and leveling it and putting a whole new thing in.
Wow.
Because, it's always costs more money to refurbish a house than it does to even build a new one.
Right.
So it's kind of sad, but because in his time, the guy, he had a nickname, the king or something, a pianist or something like that.
Oh.
Maybe
Well, that's a good question.
But he had a title that they kind of referred to him as.
They called him Mr. Entertainer.
Mr. Entertainer, for sure.
For sure.
There was was it an Oprah interview?
There was an Oprah
late
interview
in his life when he was ill.
Yeah. He went up there and he played, I think it was during Christmas time, he played some Christmas carols at the piano.
People were shocked by how much he looked aged, but he was one of the unfortunate earlier folks that got HIV positive and developed AIDS, and it was horrific.
Yeah.
For a little while when we had the COVID thing recently and people were all scared and everything, early on, the AIDS epidemic in the 90s was a period of time when people were really shit scared about it.
I think it was even earlier.
Do you know what the name of that movie is?
Which movie?
Well, it was an early movie about homosexual guys, but it was a Hollywood-made film. There's some very famous actors in it. I think it was like at least 8 guys that starred in it. Okay. I think it was in the 80s.
Was it the one with Al Pacino in it?
No, I know that. That's the Al Pacino one. That's where he plays the bad Jewish lawyer guy in
Justice for All.
No, it's.
But I know
it's about the Angels in America. That's Angels in America.
Okay.
This would be before that. I'll look it up, guys, and I'll find it. Okay. But there's one fellow I think of who was a natural blonde. He was a little bit older, but a very handsome fellow. But it's a movie about well-to-do guys. I think it was based in California, in San Francisco, which is where the real stuff hit the fan.
Yeah.
And never forget this terrible scene. One of the young fellas, who's a young partner of one of the older guys, because I think most of the guys that are featured in this were like, it kind of focuses on the wealthy trust and legacy holding boys whose grandfathers have made fortunes, and now they were living the truly gay high life in San Francisco. And the disease was just eviscerating the community. And the scary part in the one scene is this young guy starts to get the lesions, and they got him in this tight little space in the hospital, surrounded by all these machines, just machines, things to try to keep him alive and breathing. He's all hooked up and stuff, and plastic tent thing around the space, and no people will go into it. The nurses will go into it because at that time, people thought it was like the plague, that you could get it from breathing on somebody.
Yeah.
I have a friend, of course I'm not going to name him now, but a very dear friend, a very great professional musician, who's been living HIV positive now for a number of years.
Wow.
And he's now of course they've developed some medicine.
Yeah.
He actually can take a medicine which keeps the illness in
check.
not just in check, but like, what do you call it when you get shingles, but then you don't have shingles and it goes to sleep inside your body?
Oh,
Anyway, it goes deep asleep inside. So he has a wonderful partnership with a friend now, and fortunately very happy again in his life. And he can't give the illness to his friend, so they can be intimate with one another. But the change in all of that has been big. Well, Liberace didn't make it.
yeah.
He caught it and eventually killed him. It's sad for me to think the home where he died was in Palm Springs. That was another place he had a house. And he was there with his maid lady, housekeeper lady, and the nurse. And they were the ones that were there, hear the last words, last breaths, everything. And he died completely alone, just with the two ladies there in his house. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much intentional that was, though, because when it came down to it, he was extremely private about the reality of his life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people pretty much knew as time went on, but he never ever said that he was gay.
Right.
Well, that's about his life, and I've always been interested in the life as much as the skills and the talents of the composers and the pianists. But the boy could play the piano.
Oh, yeah.
Phew. Some of the highest points, I think some of the stuff that he played with those massive rings, that crap in the Vegas shows, that was garbage. I mean, it was still impressive. It was impressive to me that he could play with that much weight on his fingers, you know. But those Baldwin pianos he played, those things were glassed out. I mean, they had more glass in them than a greenhouse. But the 1950s TV shows, which you can watch on YouTube, for example.
You sure can.
Look him up. And the guy, he was handsome, he was fit.
Yeah.
You know, he's...
he always sang, "I'll be seeing you" at the end of the show.
I'll be seeing you. Yeah. And he did some films, too.
Oh, yeah. Sincerely Yours?
They tried to cast him as a romantic lead.
Yeah.
Naive people bought it. There were certain people in the industry that didn't. But, you know, it was actually, they were made almost about the same time that Van Cliburn won.
What's the movies?
The Tchaikovsky.
Oh!
Yeah, the movies are kind of around that period. Yeah. Shortly after that, I was born. Back in those days, being a concert pianist was like, wow.
Yeah, I know. You still...
some of that what do you do? Exists. I'm a concert pianist. Wow.
Oh. I know, yeah.
Nowadays...
we still get that.
I play rock guitar. Oh! Then all the girls went out. Used to be that the ladies would go after us.
Yeah.
To be honest,
they
did anyway.
Yeah.
But not the way the rock guys get them.
No. If you all right. You still want to get a reaction, right? And they ask you, "What do you do?" Don't just say you're a pianist.
Yeah.
Tell them you're a concert pianist.
Yeah.
Okay. There, you'll get the look or the eyebrows.
Part of the look you might get nowadays is one that's like, "What the hell is that?"
I don't think I've ever had that.
Well, I sometimes think that people are like, what's a concert pianist? But because, you know, we are representing that massive part of the iceberg, which is always hidden from the present contemporary mind and memory.
Yeah.
So I talk an awful lot about Liberace, but in a way, that's a
well. Let me tell you some stories I do know about Liberace.
I was just going to say, I did that as a tribute to my dad.
Okay.
Because Dad just thought, coming from where he did in the Depression, and he came. I lived my father's life because his family couldn't afford to send him to school, but he was a much more naturally gifted musician. Guy was in his 70s, even going on 80. Still playing excerpts from the Heroic Polonaise, Greek Concerto, Beethoven's.
Wow.
Various things he'd learned decades before with his Juilliard trained piano teacher. Dad was a heck of a player. And then the amazing thing about the guy is he had, you know, stacks of music and stuff, but when he'd sit down, he eventually migrated more towards a theater organ, and he had a 4 or 5 manual one in his house.
Wow.
And then when he died, my sisters found that he had 11 or 12 organs in storage lockers that he bought and kept. And
How many organs?
maybe a dozen. Some of them big. He loved Hammond organs.
Wow.
And he had several different ones of those.
That's a lot.
I remember times in the holidays and just for his own pleasure on the weekend, particularly on Sundays, we'd gone to church, and then later on in the afternoon, everybody's a little sleepy, a little tired, a little this or that, doing their own thing on Sunday. Let's say from 3 or 4 until 6 or 7 at night.
Yeah.
You just start to hear the organ music. The dad would be playing just for his own pleasure.
Oh.
I saw him at times play 2 or 3 hours and never crack open a book of music. He's like you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it was a walking
Jukebox.
yeah. But he always thought that Liberace was a creme de la creme in terms of success. He always used to tell me, he said, someday I want to see you playing the piano on Johnny Carson's show like Liberace. That was going to be the culmination of achievement in Dad's mind. And I got to go to college, and for a while I was an insufferable snot, I think. But Dad still loved me and put up with me, and I came around. I loved the man. He died in 2018. And I still miss him, still think about him. And in a sense, there's aspects of him that live in me as memories or in what I do. So that's Liberace, but you got some stories.
Oh yeah, I do that.
He's worth talking about.
I never knew how he got the name Liberace. You know that? You do know the story.
Yeah, that's family name.
It is a family name? I heard his real name was Walter Valentino.
Liberace. Vlazio. It was Vlazio Valentino Liberace.
Oh.
Because the father was Italian and
Yeah.
the mother was Polish.
Oh.
So he's a Polish pianist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's something to that.
His name was actually Vlazio Valentino. I think it's Valentino Liberace.
Okay.
And he anglicized it into Walter.
Walter. Okay.
But eventually, people that knew him personally called him Lee.
Lee. Wow. That's amazing.
When you hear him even talk about himself, when I was visiting so-and-so, just said Lee. And then you'd hear people talk about him, and they always refer to him as Lee. That's like Van Cliburn.
Yeah.
It was Harvey something B. Harvey, something Van Cliburn.
Yeah.
And he eventually just became Van.
Van. Yeah.
Nobody called him Harvey. Howard said that. Howard, my teacher Howard, was a Juilliard. They were colleagues.
Yeah.
In Rosine Levine's studio. And he said it was such astonishing because everybody called him Van. Everybody thought his name was Van Cliburn.
Yeah, I would have thought
that's the way he presented himself.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Van. And apparently he was a very charming and rather self-facing and somewhat soft-spoken Texas boy.
Yeah.
But he won the concerto competition while he was at Juilliard. Yeah. And, of course, what he played was Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
And it's a very formal, I think it still is, it's a very formal event at Juilliard.
Yeah.
At least it was back then, of course, because everybody was wearing the tails.
Yeah.
Played with the Juilliard Orchestra and all that. And then his name was in the program. And it said soloist Harvey Van Cliburn. And Howard used to love to tell that story because he said they ragged on him for weeks. Hey, Harvey, that was a great joke, man! And he hated the name Harvey.
Oh,
and of course, he said, only my mother calls me Harvey.
Oh, well, anyways, back to Liberace. Yeah. Now, what I do know about Liberace is, and I used to watch his specials on television, and I did learn a lot about improvising.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I picked up the tricks about, double arpeggios going this way, and that one trick that he used to do where I think it was in his improvisations on the Strauss waltzes, where he goes out on single notes, and I picked that up right away, and I used to double it up with octaves instead. It made it
honestly, I think octaves are easier to play.
Yeah, exactly.
The
single notes,
that's
what he did. And then he'd go, and then you get to the bottom, boom. Then he goes sound over
and stuff,
boom. So, but
regarding that, That's very reminiscent of 19th century music making.
Oh yeah.
What he was doing at those shows and playing like that, especially later in his career.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about this later.
Okay. Sure.
Very reminiscent of what they considered a concert.
Yeah.
Until Liszt had begun to establish it as a
Yeah.
repetition of some great works.
Yeah.
No, there was this what they call preluding,
Yeah.
which is kind of warming up, which I think is actually would be a very comforting thing to do.
Oh yeah.
You just got to
absolutely.
get used to tickle the keys.
Joseph
and stuff.
Hoffman used to do that in one of his records.
And then an important part of it was improvisation.
Yeah.
Completely, in many cases, I've seen organists do this especially. Give me a theme, and then they wail on it.
Yeah.
Frederick Jackisch at Wittenberg could do that. He was amazing. Every recital, he would finish by taking recommended themes from the audience. He would choose one.
Yeah.
After intermission, and then he'd sit down as almost like an encore.
Yeah.
Like for 15 or 20 minutes based on the theme.
Jeez.
And, I mean, Bach-like stuff, just extraordinary.
Wow.
But the stuff that Liberace did was actually going back to the Paderewski days and even,
Yeah.
but truly even farther back than that.
Yeah.
So anyway, like the Sigismund Thalberg days, for
Yeah.
example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the one story I do know about Liberace was what I heard on the radio from Paul Harvey.
Hmm.
I don't know. You remember Paul Harvey?
Yeah,
The guy, he used to have a special
radio
5
show.
minutes
Yeah.
for sort of an intermission
It was every
type
day.
segment.
If
It
you
was-
were listening to somehow like white people, slightly Christianish, Midwestern,
Yeah.
it came out of Iowa or St. Louis
Something
or
like
somewhere.
that.
It was very
Yeah.
based. It was really good. It was kind of a little bit like
Yeah.
old, what they call them, the speaky, not the talks that Franklin Roosevelt did
Yeah.
during the presidency, fireside chats.
Fireside chat.
Except they usually were in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
But he'd record this thing, and he had kind of a middle American, somewhat conservative, what would
Yeah.
say, but not
Yeah.
nearly like people think of conservative
Yeah.
nowadays.
It was a very strong voice, very confident.
And people liked him because he told the truth or talked about things in a very sensible and kind of obvious and clear way.
Yeah.
People respected the man. Paul Harvey was his name.
And he always,
I'll throw up a picture of him.
and he always ended the
So,
ended the broadcast with, and you know the rest of the
the
story.
story.
Yeah. So, but anyways, he did tell this story about a young man. He was about 8 to 10 years old, and he had this infected right arm.
Liberace?
Yeah, this was Liberace. And the doctors were baffled by it. You know, for years they tried to figure out how to solve the problem of this infection. And they just simply couldn't find a cure for it. And they said that they were afraid that the arm would someday have to come off.
Jeez.
It would have to come off.
Jeez.
So anyways, there was a time when the mother refused to believe that her little boy was going to lose his arm. So one night, I guess she took her little boy up into these hills, and there was this cabin, okay, and had this fireplace, old, pioneering.
This is Wisconsin.
Yeah, this is Wisconsin.
Not too hard to find.
Anyway, she built a fire, and she stuck this hearth in it, filled it up with all this water, and it was till the water was boiling. And she told her little boy, "Come over here." He says, "Kneel next to me." He says, "Let's pray." And so they prayed, and after they were finished praying, she looks at a little boy and he says, "Son, do you have faith?" And he says, "Yes, Mom." And he says, "Do you trust me?"
They were Catholics.
And he says, "Yes, Mom."
Mm-hmm.
She takes that little boy's arm and shoves it
water.
into the boiling water.
Uh-huh.
And according to Paul Harvey, he says that the pain was so excruciating, he just passed out. He didn't even have time to scream from the pain. Well, the story has it, she eventually pulled the arm out of the boiling water, wrapped it up in some gauze, and the following week they went to the doctors to have it examined. Infection, completely gone.
Yeah. Was there still any skin on the bones?
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But the rest is history. This was Liberace as a little boy.
I've heard that story. It's been a long time since I heard it.
But that was the story I heard from
He
Paul
was-
Harvey. He says that boy would eventually become one of the greatest international entertainers as the pianist Liberace. And you know the rest of the story.
He was totally devoted to his mother throughout her life. The way Elvis was with his, too.
Oh, yeah,
They're
absolutely.
both very, very supportive and devoted and grateful to their mothers. She used to travel sometimes with him to some extent when she could, especially after his father died.
Right.
And she was freer to come and go. But she went to see President Truman and everything because of him.
Yeah.
I just remember, too, there's a Bugs Bunny reference to Liberace.
There's a what?
A Bugs Bunny.
A Bugs. Oh, yeah,
Remember?
there is. Yes.
And he gets that, trying to look like this. And he just, I wish my brother George was here.
Yeah, his ears go down. Yeah.
Had the candelabra on the front. It's George, brother George played the violin.
Yeah.
So,
But anyways, that was the story I got about Liberace. Now, years later, we fast forward. I think it was sometime in somewhere between 2010 2020. Hollywood did come out with a new movie about Liberace, and if you're interested in it, the movie is called Candelabra.
that's based on the book.
It's based on the book.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that.
I
But
just remembered. I used to have the book.
But Mike Douglas stars as Liberace.
Wow.
So a fine actor, and I'm sure he did a
Isn't he
real
married
bang-up
to
job.
what's her face?
Debbie Moore? No, not Debbie Moore.
No, that knockout.
Catherine.
Yeah.
Oh, help me out.
Really cool knockout woman.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah, Zeta Jones.
Yeah, Zeta-Jones. Yeah. Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Just
Yeah.
he's played some, and I don't mean, come on, guys, but Michael Douglas.
That's who it
You know?
was. And I tell you, I saw the cover of the movie.
Well,
The cover of the movie, they got the wig and the makeup, and he looks just like him. I
Wow.
swear. He does the smile thing like this
he
in the
could
front
do
cover.
it. He could do it. Well, he played that. What was the famous Wall Street character? He played the really sleazy investment guy based on a true story.
Yeah.
And he had the whole hair slick
Yeah.
back thing.
He
He
was
looked
like
like
Greed.
a cat-like.
It was
a little-
good. Greed.
Yeah.
It was good. It was called Wall Street. as well.
His father,
Yeah.
Kirk Douglas,
Yeah.
played Vincent Van Gogh.
Yes. Lust for Life.
Lust
I
for
know
Life. Amazing movie.
Yes.
Oh my God. Anthony, what's his name? Played Paul Gauguin. The kind of rough guy. Quinn.
Anthony Quinn. Yeah.
Played Gauguin. So, yeah.
Yeah, Kirk's
it's an interesting son and father.
Yeah.
His dad lived for a long
A
time.
very long time.
He just died recently, didn't he?
I don't know.
Just in recent
I
years.
don't know. But he was still very
Kirk.
strong.
Kirk was over 100 years old when he died.
Yeah. I still watch Spartacus. Never seen Spartacus?
Oh, incredible.
Gosh, I have it in the folks. If you've
That
seen
should be
Spartacus,
a bucket list. John.
yeah. Look at that. Watch that movie in the Criterion release. The Criterion release. There's the special.
Big stuff.
It's got extra 20 minutes of extra footage in the thing, and the battle scenes and the parts, amazing.
Well, as you can imagine,
There's no CG in this.
I read about him.
So-
I don't know that Kirk Douglas was a method actor.
Yeah.
But the people would say he really threw himself into the parts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And would really rehearse really hard, really exhausting. It was almost like intentionally extra hard work all the time.
Yeah.
Spartacus is a famous historical truth character. The movie is Hollywood, but
Of course it is.
he was a slave to the Romans who led a rebellion, which actually caused some ruckus for the Romans for a while.
Quite a headache.
But this was like, I don't know, a city in Rhode Island taking on the United States. I mean, it was
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
And he gets crucified. It's a really powerful movie.
Yes.
And Kirk Douglas is just amazing. I mean, he was a great actor.
Oh, he was a wonderful actor. He was
And
brilliant.
if you ever get a chance to see Lust for Life,
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I have it on DVD. I know I have it on the video cassette, but it was a little hard to come by for a long time because in the actual movie, it's really cool. It's a story about him A little bit kind of goes to the early part, but where it really goes is when he moves down towards Arles, down in south of France, and he gets a house, and Paul Gauguin comes and lives with him for a while. And then a lot of the film is about the latter part of his life down there. But even from the very beginning, because we all think the sunflowers and the bright, beautiful colors. The early stuff, because he was Belgian, and from gray country farmer kind of people stuff. He has some amazing drawings going back, which are mostly very dark pictures.
Oh yeah.
Of I forget what they call them, the potato eaters, he calls or something. And they're having a meal of potatoes and turnips and stuff at the table. Very poor, dirty people and stuff. It was a really cool film because they had frozen frame copies of the actual paintings, and then they would either melt into the film and you could see it become part of real life, or you would see the real life stuff going on and it would get frozen into a painting. And there's something like at least 27 or something, original paintings that they copied out of museums with the film that were included in the show. And I think there was something about that made it hard to have access to it, although I don't think that's still the case.
Wow.
But if you get a chance, one way or another, to see Lust for Life, that, for me, in terms of things I've seen in my life, that'd definitely be a bucket list one. I don't know, maybe not a super short bucket list, but if you got 50 films or 100 films you gotta see, definitely see that.
Yeah.
So did we do enough of Liberace?
Oh, I don't know. He'll probably creep up in some later episodes.
You made the mistake of giving the mic to me to talk, so you know what happens.
Don't worry about it. It's what we do here, okay? We're okay with this, okay? Now, for some of you that didn't know, Mark reminded me earlier this week that this year, or this week was actually Gabrielle Faure's birthday. Gabrielle Faure's birthday. So I thought we'd spend some time talking about Gabrielle Faure. I brought.
How do they say that in French? They do the same thing. Bon anniversaire.
What is it?
Yes, no. I forget how they do the bon anniversaire.
What?
Bon anniversaire. Well, good anniversary. It's their happy birthday.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't remember how the French sing it. But anyway.
So I brought in oodles of scores here.
Got some Dover ones there?
Yeah, I got some Dovers. You got the Dovers?
The Dover ones.
Both of them?
Well, I don't know. I recognize the second one. Yeah, I think I have that.
You have this one? You have this one?
Yes.
Yes, you have both.
He was a prolific composer.
Oh, yeah, very prolific.
I mean,
but not as prolific
not
as
Bach, not Mozart, but I mean...
Definitely not Liszt, but
in the 19th century, quite a lot of music.
Quite a bit of music.
Very little of which most of us play.
Us. Oh, yeah.
The French still play.
But you'll be surprised. Much of it is gone.
What?
Yes, his actual output... His actual output is much larger than what we thought it was today, even today.
So
by the end of his life, he had gotten rid of a lot. He destroyed it himself. He found a lot of his works very insignificant and of no credit to his true talent. What he felt.
Brahms is famous for having done that.
Yeah.
Brahms went to the Rhine, took all the letters that Clara had written. And I think approximately 25% of his manuscript output.
Oh, gosh.
And burn it in a pile on the Rhine. Because he himself was a very famous musical archaeologist.
Yeah.
He was founder of some societies at the time when Schliemann was digging up Troy in Turkey and finding that it wasn't just a myth, that it was true. And Brahms was on the board that served on the first Bach-Gesellschaft, the very first ones to try to find and print all of Bach's known music. He was on the advisory board. And he had a huge collection of medieval and Renaissance original scores or copies of things from Baron von Swieten's library, who Haydn had known. He was very conscious of the fact people are going to be digging through my crap when I die, after I'm dead. and I want to control the narrative.
Exactly.
And presumably Faure did the same thing. Faure was important. He was the leader of the conservatory for a period of time.
Oh yeah, he was.
He was a big figure. One would say, perhaps, I mean, some of his music really goes places. But when you compare what later Debussy and what Ravel did,
Yeah.
he falls a little bit on the more conservative side.
A little bit
His
more.
language, though,
yeah.
is... I don't think I've played enough of it. I've played some. I like what I've heard.
Okay.
But I don't quite get him yet. Maybe
Yeah.
you have more to say about that.
Well, you might want to look into his work after we talk about it today. Okay. In case you haven't seen these, for all you piano geeks out there, these are Dover editions of Gabriel Faure's work. This is Nocturnes.
Still in existence, right? They're
Barcarolles.
still publishing things.
I think so. I'm not sure.
I'll look
It's
it up.
hard to tell. You can look at,
I'll look it
find out. But this is a nice, fine picture of Gabriel Faure in this one. It's a nice edition. And this is, what is it? Complete Preludes, Impromptus, and Waltz Caprices. Nice picture. I think that's a Renoir painting with two girls at the piano.
Yeah, it is.
So, anyways, so for you folks, I've been really busy this week. I had so much to do this week. I had to pull an all-nighter last night to get some information on Gabriel Faure. Now, I have here my cards here of information. Depending on how much you want to know about this guy, I'm going to give you the basics from these cards, but if you want for me to go deeper, I have my little steno pad here of extra information. I'm not sure how far I want to take this because his life was really busy and it was rather chaotic, and I don't know. It was. I'll let you. We'll decide how far this goes. Now, his name is. All right. You're going to have to help me with the French here. How would you say that?
Urbain.
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 It looks like urban, but there's an I in there, so it makes it nasal. Urbain.
Okay. Gabriel
Urbain.
Urbain
Faure.
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 Oh, let him do it. Okay.
Backwards are. Faure. Yeah.
All right.
It's all right. Faure.
Show off. Okay, anyways. He was born on May 12th, 1845 in Pamiers,
Ariège.
Ariège.
Ariège, yeah.
Well, anyways, it's in southern France, okay? He died on November 4th, 1924 at the age of 79. So he lived a pretty good long life. He is the youngest of 6 children. He had 4 older brothers, 1 older sister. And miraculously, he is the only musical talent in his family. Mom, dad, uncles, aunts, cousins showed no evidence of any musical talent, and then he shows up. Now, his father was a school teacher, and he had his well, let's just say, this is where it gets a little bit strange as far as his showing evidence of his musical talent. They say there was a church down the street, and he played the organ, and apparently he played the organ well, that he actually impressed a lot of the people in the locals, much of the locals. Where did he learn how to play organ? I can't find any information on that. How did he come to know the instrument or anything about music? There's no information on it. Okay. Now the father was a school teacher, his father, and watching his son mess around with the organ, he was sort of a little skeptical. He was about the level of talent his son displayed, and in defense of the father, Gabriel later on in life said that he did everything on that organ wrong. It was jumbled. He had potential technique, but he had bad fingering. He had bad posture. He says he can't really say that he was a child prodigy of any level, is what he said later in life.
Mm.
Now, we fast forward a little bit, and okay, there are some history books that say that I don't know whether it was due to family hardships or finances or what, but he was sent off for 4 years to live with a foster parent up until he was 9.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's where it gets a little bit hazy there, because on one hand, he's playing the organ. He's still some sources say he's still living with his family, but on the other hand, who was this foster parent that he had to live with for 4 years? And there's no details about what that whole arrangement was about. Now, at 9 years old, his talent brought him to the attention of Louis Niedermeyer. Through encouragement of Louis Niedermeyer, he convinced the father to have him sent to a new school that he had opened. It is the School of Classical and Religious Music.
Mm.
So it's a boarding school. Okay, he would be staying there. Now, so the father said, okay, since he would encourage his son, if Louis Niedermeyer, who was rather well known for music education at the time, he says he would be good, then by all means, maybe you should send him there. So he goes there, and it is the School of Classical and Religious Music. Now there, he studies with a Clement. All right, you tell me, Lauret.
Lauret. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Clement Lauret. He studies organ with Clement Lauret. Louis Dietz for harmony, and Xavier Vaughan-Taylor.
Vaughan-Taylor.
Thaler, Thaler.
Taler.
Okay, Vaughan-Taylor. For counterpoint, studies counterpoint. Wow, and he studies with Louis Niedermeyer himself for piano, plain song, and composition. Plain song, same as Gregorian chant, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is starting to make sense to me now a bit more.
Yeah.
There's a very strong Catholic, French Catholic background in his music study, music making, which is starting to make a little sense to me. Not that it makes any sense to you, but for how I hear his music and how I know his music. Just in general, there's something gentler about Faure's ideas and the way he makes things.
Yeah.
And also, and especially in his songs, the way the poetry that he chooses in the music that he writes. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
But much more inward.
Yes.
Introspection.
Yeah.
Something of a sadness sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of the songs. Debussy does a song called "En Bateau."
Yes, from the suite.
And then, but there's a song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I think it's "En Bateau" or something "Bateau," but it's almost like the Viennese Gondel song.
Yeah.
Mendelssohn's, those
right.
things. But no, it's a piece about the water, being in the water and stuff. I don't think they're the same poetry. And there's a famous "En Bateau" of Gabriel Faure in songs.
Oh.
It's very plaintive. Plaintive. Kind of a calling out in a quiet, personal, emotional way that's a little sad,
Yeah.
Something that I kind of think with his music. I played the C minor piano quartet.
Yeah.
And I think about the slow movement.
Mm-hmm.
da-da-da. The way that the melody moves through the instruments and comes up and through, and the kind of the climax. It's music that can make you weep.
Oh yeah,
There's
absolutely.
some aspect to it. And his happy music, well, let's put it this way. What I find missing in Faure, where I think a lot of composers will find their way back to him as an inspiration,
Yeah.
there's not an ounce of Beethoven in Faure.
No, you're not going to find
There's
that.
nothing of that character, the drive, the structure, even the way the melodies are constructed, anything like that. And I'm not saying that all music has to be that way, but I do think, of course, if you look at any of the German composers, everybody, as Dr. Walter said, had Beethoven's balls.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
you had to match up to that. Berlioz took it to heart in his
Yeah.
own kind of way.
Well, more on that later.
Okay, but
Yeah.
there's nothing in there with Faure, and I think that it comes probably from this church thing. So that's my little, what do you call commentary? in the narrative
exactly.
there. Go ahead.
All right. Well, anyway,
So he stayed with all these different teachers.
he studied with all these different teachers, and during his stay there, upon graduating, he had won all these prizes at the school, including first prize in composition for this choral work called Cantique de Jean Racine,
Cantique de Jean Racine.
Opus 11, which is now pretty much a mainstay in the choral repertoire.
Oh, yeah.
So apparently.
Mhm.
So he graduated as a laureate, organ, piano, harmony, composition, with a, all right, you tell me how you say that.
Maître means master. Maître de chapelle, the master of the chapel.
Okay, a diploma,
Mhm.
basically is what that was.
Mhm.
Now, he himself was a teacher. His most notable students, Ravel, Georges Enescu,
Ah.
and the Boulanger sisters.
They also, well, I know they studied with Faure. I did not know that Enescu.
Yeah,
Georges Enescu studied with Faure.
Faure, yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah. But that's just a small roster. There were others. So, but now, how much further do you want to dig deep with this guy? This guy.
I think we spent a long time talking about Liberace. We should balance it out with this fellow.
All right, sure thing. All right, so Gabriel Faure, he's sort of confusing. He's finding jobs teaching piano lessons. He's a piano teacher, which he didn't really like doing. And he's also playing organ at churches, which, once again, he didn't really like doing that either. What he really wanted to do was be a composer.
Mm-hmm.
But since making a living was really a necessity at the time, he really didn't find time to be able to sit down and compose something. Trying to work out things with churches, the pastors of some of these churches questioned his level of, commitment to the Catholic faith. And so I remember reading one story where he showed up for Sunday Mass still wearing the party clothes that he was wearing since Friday night.
Ooh.
So apparently, the man got around partying with his buddies and pals.
Don't you think he looked a lot like Greek?
Yeah, a little bit.
They both had these big mustaches.
A little bit. Yeah. So, by the way, sometime during his stay at that school, Niedermeyer passes away, and Sasson takes over. And apparently Sasson recognizes this kid, Faure, as having some talent, and pretty much takes him under his wing.
Uh-huh.
And so they become really good friends. And, it would be no surprise to me that maybe there was some influence from Sasson, but not a lot. Okay? I mean, from, knowing some of his music, because I've looked at some of Sasson's music, and basically I see no resemblance. Faure had more of a poetic temperament, but Sasson's, I'm sorry, his music is for the virtuoso. There's so many notes in it.
Well, and that probably speaks to how perhaps truly great an instrumentalist Saint-Saëns was versus Faure.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps, because, I mean, Saint-Saëns, I thought it was amazing that Tchaikovsky as a young man,
Yeah.
when I bought that old Tchaikovsky recordings
Yeah.
that I talked about this previous show, the very first piece on the CD is some kind of, I forget what, it's a very fast piece by Saint-Saëns.
Saint-Saëns.
And yeah, if you listen to the guy, he also was a great representative of that French school, very clean and precise, and
Absolutely.
kind of like facile, you know, when it's easy, kind of way of playing, throwing things off. You know, Rubinstein mentions it a little bit in his biography.
Yeah, My Young Years.
Yeah, in the first book, when he talks about, he was a big Wagner nut, you know, and went to some performances at Bayreuth when he was younger, in the late 19th century, early 20th century, right around there. But I thought he went with Paul Kochanski as Polish violin for them together. Then he met Emmy Destine, I think, once one or another down there. But he talks about, in all of that, at what an influence Wagner was in terms of truly establishing what could be considered a German orientation towards music, the German way to make music, and all of that stuff, versus, for example, the French. And of course, Davies at the time was making fun of Wagner and Gollywog's Cakewalk, right?
Yeah.
You know, also Tristan and Isolde, he used the chord and did something funky with it. And with Saint-Saëns, well, both of them I think is like very French.
Oh yeah.
You know, Saint-Saëns is perhaps because of the virtuosity, been taken on by other people, even in Dave Hurwitz's crushing review of Young Longlong's recent
release.
Saint-Saëns
Quality
Animals, all that.
Yeah.
Rubinstein's first, I mean, he played the A major concerto, the big, more popular one, but of Mozart. But his first concerto as a teenager, was 16 or
something like that,
was the Saint-Saëns G minor.
Yeah,
that was what he called his true war
horse.
He played those in public before he did the Chopin concerto. Anyway, yeah, but definitely two different schools. And I think also Faure, it's interesting because there's the playing chant and there's the counterpoint. And I think there is the very French Catholic tradition of music making, which is not German and Bach and Protestant.
No, it's not.
The way even though they play the organs and stuff. Because César Franck has a certain kind of quality to the way he plays it. You know, he had huge hands and he was a big boy. It was a fabulous organist. And you could see that.
Yeah.
Also, even in the style of music, he writes preludes, chorales, and fugues. But not in a Bachish kind of way. It doesn't have quite the same thing. Saint-Saëns comes from also clearly a more classical period. The guy was born in 1835, I think.
Yeah.
Died in early 20s, something like that. Almost, well, maybe in his 90s or getting on it before he died. He's also Leopold Kodowski's only known piano teacher.
Yeah.
But I think he went back so far that there was a very strong, still classic-y kind of orientation to music making back in the day. And he talked this book, if I get a chance to talk about it.
Okay, sure.
Today or not, but Kalkbrenner, wasn't it?
Kalkbrenner, yeah, France.
Very famous pianist in Paris, who, when Chopin arrived, offered to teach him for a year and turn him into a real concert pianist. But Kalkbrenner and some of those people are actually credited with probably establishing what was known as and became the French school.
Yeah.
They kind of started the whole thing, the Paris Conservatory, and a certain kind of way of playing, which was at least into the First World War era, as we've learned from recordings, was a truly different kind of school and tradition and way of playing that definitely there was a Russian school of some sort that established by Salati and Rubinstein. And then there's the German schools. And then there was Liszt as kind of the king of all of that stuff, who would have influenced people in different ways. But anyway, I got on my commentary thing here again. Please keep going. This is interesting.
All right, sure thing.
But I was particularly taken with all this stuff we've been saying. I'm starting to get a sense for why his music is the way it is.
Yeah.
I love it when people, I heard some people play it really well and do a wonderful job. And some things I like to play. I like his songs. I like accompanying his songs.
Sure.
Some of his stuff is a little odd in terms of melodies.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason for that.
Okay.
There's a reason for all that. Well, I'm getting to it.
Okay.
All right. So, anyways, he had all these ideas about composition, but he couldn't find the time to sit down because people always wanted him as an administrator or a teacher.
Yes.
You know, and he was well loved.
He
was well loved. His students would die for him. They loved him. You know, Debussy, Ravel, all these other guys who were starting to wanted to bring music to more update to the future. He supported that. He said they said this guy was very open-minded. And if you notice, you know, some of his music, you said it was kind of, some of it, it's hard to understand where he's going at, what direction he's trying to go. There's a reason for that. Some of his compositions he brought to the Paris Conservatory, and they were astonished by how modern it looked because he didn't resolve certain antecedent phrases, you know. Because all right, in common practice, as far as composition goes, one of the first things you're taught is about the period, the antecedent phrase, and the consequent phrase, cadence, right? Perfect authentic cadence at the end. His music is not like that. His music is organized in phrase groups, and, you know, and where the period really is, we don't know sometimes. It's because you have these unexpected chord changes, and you know another chord appears, and it brings in a whole new digression of music that's somehow supposed to relate with the first part, you know, the first phrase group.
But since he probably presumed to be a serious composer, do you know what the logic or the rationale is for why he wrote his music that way?
Well, because he was open to the idea of moving towards the future. Now, look, he loved Wagner, okay? He adored Wagner's music. As a matter of fact, he would make plans in his calendar where to travel for the next production of whatever Wagner opera was being performed. Guess what his favorite opera was?
Parsifal.
Parsifal.
Yeah, of course.
His favorite opera was
the
Parsifal.
most religious of all of them.
Yeah. And so, and he saw any time he heard a word where Parsifal was playing, he put it in his calendar to see if he could go.
Well, you know why? Because when Wagner wrote that, it was his last opera, and it was premiered at Bayreuth. For 30 years, that was the only place you could hear it. So until after the First World War, some around that. So I think after it expired, they had legal control over it.
Yeah.
And then Metropolitan.
Yeah.
I don't know who else may have done it elsewhere in the world, but Metropolitan, of course, did the first public performance of Parsifal in New York in the United States. And then Toscanini, as I talked about in the previous show, 1930, was hired to go to Bayreuth. I put some pictures up of him and Siegfried and all that. I think he'd arrived just after, because Cosima died in April 1930.
Yeah.
And it's about 2 months before the whole summer festival really gets moving. And it was Toscanini who had an original score with what they called the Großglocke, which is kind of like a strung instrument, actually, but it's almost like it's banged. It's like if you had a huge bass string, and it's struck almost like a bell and make it boom, boom.
Yeah.
You could do the same effect on a Steinway if you lift up the dampers, and you could hit it, but probably pluck it as well.
Yeah.
And you get this kind of sound.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't know why, but in the rehearsal, there was no Großglocken. And I don't know if the tradition had just kind of gone away and they didn't use it, or somebody decided at some point we don't want to use it. The space, even to this very day, under the stage where the orchestra sits, and you get 45, 50 of them down there. I don't know if it's any more than that.
Yeah.
It's hot. I mean, come on, some of these operas go on 3, 4, 5 hours.
Exactly.
Those guys are not in, they're not wearing tails down there.
Yeah.
It's hotter than hell. And there's no air conditioning, because the noise would affect things, you know. I think it's very possible the Großglocken might have been, we need more room. Or maybe the tuba player during that certain period of time was big boy.
Yeah.
And we don't get any room for the girls. But Toscanini's the one that asked about it and demanded that they find that because it was in the original score.
Yeah.
So it was the Americans who brought back the original tradition of Parsifal.
Wow.
I did not know he was a follower because Debussy was decidedly not.
Yes, Debussy
Of course,
was not.
Debussy's a bit younger than Faure, but
Oh, it goes even more extreme than just not being a Wagner,
Yeah.
right? Because years later, there was a push. I don't know if it was due to World War I or something, but there was a big push to have Wagner's music and work blackballed completely from Paris Conservatory.
it would be
And guess who was the leader of that group?
Debussy. No,
Saint-Saëns.
Saint-Saëns.
Saint-Saëns led the lead to have Wagner blackballed at Paris Conservatory. They would not hear another note of Wagner until 1930.
Wow.
1930, and guess who brought him back? Faure did. Faure.
Well, both of them would have been old guys when they did that.
Yeah. Well,
Because Saint-Saëns,
Well,
if
he
you talk
died-
First World War, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there was something like 50,000 minimum French young men who were killed in the trenches. I saw a movie one time.
Yeah.
It's about the First World War. It's a very interesting little series of films about First World War. And you always, everybody thinks about the mustard gas and the trench warfare.
Yeah.
Well, I never realized it wasn't like trench warfare, like all over Europe and everywhere else. Infamously, it was an area where there's what they said, something like 10 square miles in France, across the border. But it's like, 2 miles wide, 5 miles deep, with all these trenches dug in. And for at least 2 or 3 years, that isn't the only place they had battles, but that was one of the places. And the British were there as well. Sometimes they make an advance, they get pushed back. Can you imagine that? For 2 or 3 years, they were fighting over 20 square feet. What is 20 square? I'm sorry. What is 20 square feet? I mean,
I know.
here in Columbus, like, what does that mean?
It's like,
And that was the chunk of the war. But it had a profound effect on France.
Yeah.
Because there's so many young men. And the thing about World War I, it was a big nationalistic time. All the young nation states in the later 19th century to identify themselves. And everybody was proud to be this, proud to be that, and do this and that. And then they sided up with each other with the treaties. And the people just signed up.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and I'm going to fight because, I'm leaving my nation, my country, and everything. I think that between World War I and the Spanish flu, I think it's possible that there's a minimum of 50 million casualties, deaths, between those things. Now, I think maybe it was bigger than 50,000. It must have been a bigger number. It had to have been. Because Gettysburg and the Civil War eventually, I think in the Civil War in the United States, maybe it's 750,000 people, boys, mostly killed. But what happened in France was, a lot of the guys that went to fight were young men.
Yeah.
You know, the British have made a lot of movies about.
Yeah.
I saw an interesting film that was done not so long ago.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? C.S. Lewis.
C.S.
Right?
Lewis. Yeah.
He was for a period of time in the trenches in World War I.
Yeah.
He got badly injured, and
Yeah.
then they sent him back. He got shell shocked or something, knocked out. No, he didn't leave right away. He stayed. But had some buddies that had died, and it's a really cool movie.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but you could look it up. And I think we watched it on something free.
Okay.
But it's a movie about C.S. Lewis and his early life, before he wrote the whole Witch and the Wardrobe stuff and all that. But you see, especially the British lost a lot of guys too.
Yeah.
The Americans, thank God, we didn't get involved until 1917. And within 11, 12, 13 months, it was all over. Because the American industry went and kicked ass. You know, just finished it. So there were doughboys that lost their lives. But France was so devastated by the loss of all those men that the Paris Conservatory began to admit women, which they had not done. Now, some women had studied, like the Boulanger sisters, for example. But this way, it was very uncommon to have that many of them in the school. There was a famous girl from Boston who was a child prodigy who eventually went and studied there. I know who you're talking about. I have a CD of her playing. And then in addition to that, from the First World War forwards, the school began to hire piano professors who were not French, and not necessarily of the French tradition. And so I think there still is a kind of Frenchy kind of way of playing. We talked about that with Johnny Thibaudet. Hamelin, in a sense, I mean, Thibaudet, though, even more so. There's a certain just facility, the way that he plays. Hamelin's is perhaps a little bit more extraordinary. Plus, he does Godowski and stuff like that. But I just remember Johnny Thibaudet often being considered very French kind of approach to play.
Feathery.
I mean, just the stuff. It tosses it off with grace.
Exactly.
That's originally part of that tradition. But it all had to change because they lost so many guys. But then it gave the girls a chance to show themselves. And Courteau had been taught by Louis Dieme. I don't know how you say his name. It's Dieme or Dieme, or I'm not sure. Or if it's even... No, I think the IE is Die. But he was a long-term influence in the Paris Conservatory in the 19th century. Courteau was studied with it. And then quite a number of people studied with Courteau. A lot of women as well studied with him. And he may have passed along certain kind of traditions. I think I told you, I finally organized all my CDs in that tower a while back, and I don't know if it's ever appeared on the show. One of those many Beethoven sonata collections I have is Yves Nat. Yvesnat. It's a very famous mid-century French pianist. It's very interesting to hear his Beethoven. And it's a different kind of playing. It's very impressive. Very interesting, but it's not Wilhelm Kempf for sure. It's a little different. But anyway, I got off on talking again. But this is really fascinating because I'm learning, or maybe putting things together about Faure that I never got.
So, anyways, even from the grave, he died in 1924. And like I said, Paris Conservatory would not hear another note of Wagner's until 1930.
And he'd written something about it.
Yeah, he did. Now, the interesting thing about his, near the end of his life,
like
it was
1860 when he was born, wasn't it? Something like that.
I'm sorry?
Like 1860 or something.
He was born in 1846.
Whoa, 46. Okay.
So he lived to be nearly 80. Okay, so he was 79.
Uh-huh.
Now, during that time, he was seeing a 24-year-old girl.
When?
When he was like in his final years.
French guys, you know.
Yeah, so, but I told you.
Monsieur, your mustache tickles my face.
It tickles my face.
And when you're down there, it just tickles me so much. You might have to cut that part.
Oh, yeah.
We always put this show is not for kids.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. But like I said, the students loved him. They adored him.
Yes.
Okay? The younger kids, the younger students, they all liked Wagner. Okay? It was the faculty and, the older generation of composers that sought to,
there was...
have a blackball.
I mean, the French and the Germans had historic problems for centuries.
Yeah.
Heidelberg Castle, which is famously part of it's ruined.
Yeah.
That goes back to the 1600s when it was destroyed, parts of it. And it was never put back together.
Yeah.
It's not like that happened in the 20th century. The French did that when they invaded. The French were always invading Germany. And then Napoleon came along and this and that. It was really probably Napoleon was the last straw. There began to be a nationalist movement to organize a German state, which didn't come until later in the 19th century through, what was his name? Not Hindenburg, but Bismarck. But there was the Franco-Prussian War, they called it.
Yeah.
1870-71. That was relatively fresh in the memory of people. And what the French weren't prepared for, because previously, in the earlier times, the 1830s, 1840s, Napoleonic period, nobody beat Napoleon right away.
Yeah.
And the French would come and do some crap. And the reason that the Germans were so vulnerable was there were all these little Germanic states, sometimes just city-states, going back to the medieval period. And they were only unified in a sense kind of by dialectic language similarities.
Yeah.
And maybe there wasn't even necessarily a true racial German-like sense of connectivity.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that another time because I know a lot of history about that. But the French were a little bitter about the Franco-Prussian War because, the Alsace-Lorraine area of France is kind of a German-French culture.
Yeah.
The cuisine, the language itself is a little odd, and some of the cultural traditions. It's gone back and forth, and they lost that after the war. For that next period of time, it belonged to Germany, and so it was in the 1870s. You're thinking that Wagner's really starting to come to the fore in that decade. That's when the ring starts to show up. And, definitely with the French, there were some bad feelings about it. And then with World War I, that was devastating for the French. Because so much of that war happened in French territory.
Yeah. So, I'm going to skip a lot of his personal life.
Am I talking too much?
No, you're not talking. No, not because of that. But if you want to know about more of his personal life, the man was a stud. Okay, he was married. He was married.
But he was a Frenchman.
He had many mistresses. He got it going. Old school. But anyways, I'd like to fast forward to the things he did for the Paris Conservatory, mostly because it was quite a turning point for that school. He shook up that conservatory in a big way, particularly in the manner they did competitions, and particularly in the way they treated Maurice Ravel. Now, as you know, Maurice Ravel had been trying to win the Prix de Rome many times. It was the 6th time that he tried for the Prix de Rome that caught Gabriel Faure's attention, because during the first rounds, he was already eliminated. They didn't want to listen to Ravel's music. Okay, and he thought that was kind of suspicious that they would just automatically turn down Ravel. And so he discovered that the judges, in a lot of ways, had this political thing going on where they would give first priority and special treatment for their students. And they were being paid off. And so Gabriel Faure decided to institute policies to eliminate that and have outside judges from the Paris Conservatory to be judging competitions and auditions and things. And that shook them up because these people, these faculty members who were judging all these competitions, they were being paid extra to be judges. And so when that went away, there was a hoo-ha, and everybody was like ticked off, and they wound up, most of them wound up leaving. Particularly Massenet. Massenet was probably his biggest nemesis and rival at the conservatory, because in a lot of ways, Massenet, from what I've done from some reading, he had a very high opinion of himself. He sought to be, that guy. He sought to be the leader of the music department at Paris Conservatory, but he wanted to be a lifetime office. He says, and he didn't like Faure, and once Faure became, their chairman, their leader, and he was instituting policies, he just got up and left, not to be seen again. So, now, concerning World War I, he enlisted. He enlisted for military services. He loved France, and he was involved in several operations on the siege of different locales in France. Eventually, after he was discharged, the streets were so violent and bloodied that he just had to leave. And his musical circles all wound up planning to meet up again in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, remember his old school, the School of Classical and Religious Music? Well, they reopened a new school in Switzerland, and that's where they all met. It was over there. And once again, Saint-Saëns was there to lead the group. And, well, that whole thing with Germany had Faure. I mean, he loved the musicians and the composers that he was in the group, but he could not see himself being against Wagner's music. He didn't see Wagner as a German, the enemy or anything. He just looked at Wagner as the composer. And so he just wound up washing his hands to the whole thing. Now, we come to the string quartet. The string quartet is opus 120, 121 or 128. I can't remember the last digit. It would be his final work. And he had been, people had asked him about, why don't you do a string quartet? You've done all these other things. Do a string quartet. The two things he had problems with was doing symphony work. He was not confident about doing symphony work simply because he was not, he was not confident with his skills in being able to manipulate sounds and instruments, in the group. And so he tended to avoid doing that, with the exception of the Requiem. The Requiem, it took him 20 years to complete the work. 20 years. So that it was a very slow process. And so his final hurdle was to complete a string quartet. Now, what he says, it's interesting you say that Beethoven's cojones hanging over everybody's head. He looks at it as, this is Beethoven's domain. What right do I have to to enter this domain where he has already ruled? And so that was his biggest problem. And so he sort of hesitantly and with great trepidation tried to complete this string quartet, which winds up being, actually part of the string quartet repertoire, ironically.
Yeah.
And it would be his final work,
Piece.
his final piece.
Mm.
Incidentally, I said that he did enlist in the military. Before he passed away, he was actually honored for his services in the military during World War I.
Really?
And was awarded the, what is it? The
Legion of
Croix
Honor.
de Guerre.
Oh, Cross of War.
Yeah, the Cross of War.
Croix de Guerre.
Yeah, he was awarded that for his services.
Wow.
So the man was a soldier. But
So, how much of his music have you played? Are you done with the biography?
I'm pretty much done with that. How much of
It's
it?
really
Now,
good, Elmer.
I'll tell you what.
This was nice.
The most I've done about Faure. I've done the elegy for cello and piano
Mm-hmm.
countless times. I mean, when I was in high school, we had so many strings, in Bowling Green and Findlay, Ohio, that when we went to contest, there was going to definitely be 2 or 3 cellists that are going to want to play Faure's elegy, which I did dutifully. And so, and anytime a cellist wanted to play the elegy, says, "Oh, go to Elmer, go to Elmer. He plays it every year." So sure enough, I had to play. I had to play Faure's elegy. The only other time I've ever delved into Faure was when I first listened to Leonard Pinario's recording of the Pavane. You remember the Pavane?
Yeah. There's 2. There's Ravel's Pavane and then there's
Faure's Pavane.
Yeah.
It's actually a beautiful work. I like this work. I'm sure most of you know it, but it hasn't. It's been silent for the last few couple 2 or 3 decades now. Nobody plays it. I don't even hear orchestra. But the recording I heard was from Pinario, and it was actually his arrangement of the work that he usually performs.
Oh.
He looked more into the orchestra score, and just sort of whittled out his own arrangement. Now, what he did not know was Gabriel Faure's Pavane was originally for piano. And for a while, it was not available until, I'm going to guess, somewhere in the 1980s. This is the Roy Howitt edition. And it's quite nice. If you go on YouTube, we actually have an old Belta Mignon recording of Faure himself playing this work.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a
Yum da dum da 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 dee dum da dee da da dum. It's a beautiful piece.
It's a gorgeous work. But I've dabbled with this work before.
Isn't it? I mean, it's an F-sharp minor.
Yeah.
It's a Pavane, of course, so it's supposed to be sad.
It's a dance.
It's wonderfully sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a dance. But I mean that melody.
Yeah, I know. It's magical. It's got a.
Well, it almost makes it through the octave. It goes up. It passes the B coming back down, but it's basically within a minor sixth.
Yeah.
F sharp, G sharp, A, B, A, G sharp, E, A, F sharp, G sharp, A, G sharp, F sharp, G sharp, E, F sharp, E sharp, C sharp. It's a very memorable melody. It speaks so directly.
Yeah.
So you played this.
Yeah, I dabbled with it. I dabbled with it.
You never performed it for
I
anybody?
never performed it for anybody.
Oh.
But I would love to. I mean, I'd love to open.
How's the melody go for the Ravel?
Let's see. Dee da da dee da da dee da da dee da 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 dee da dee da da dee.
Yeah. I like the melody of the Faure better.
Yeah.
It's more right to the point.
Yeah.
I remember seeing something very funny recently. I don't know where I saw it. Somebody was talking about when Ravel heard somebody perform it.
Perform this?
No, his pavane for a dead princess.
Yeah.
He said, this is supposed to be a pavane for a dead princess, not a dead pavane for a princess.
Oh God! Oh, jeez! Oh!
To remind the guy that this is truly a dance.
Yeah.
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 And it does have the. But you can hear sometimes. And I think that's a little slow.
It is slow.
Because the accompaniment in the orchestra, and it's also using the piano, he marks his staccato with the left hand. And it's not going to be, dry as a bone, Southwestern Desert staccato, but it's supposed to be plucked.
Yeah, it's staccato.
And it's bum, 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 bum. There's a slightly forward move in the dance, which wants to keep it going. It wants to move forward the trajectory of the phrases.
Yeah.
And I have heard dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong. You lose me before you're out of the first measure.
Yeah.
So what all we got here?
Okay.
You showed in the colored books.
All right. Now.
But you got the pavane.
Yes. Now, for all you big time super virtuoso wannabes, okay, this is quite possibly Faure's most ambitious work for the piano. It started out as a solo piano work, and he must have liked it so much that he would eventually arrange it for piano and orchestra.
I've got the performance on the
you do?
tapes that I made.
You did. This is Faure's Ballade in Opus 19
What's
for
the
solo.
piece that is also considered Debussy's concerto? Is it not the same name?
Fantasia.
It's a fantasy?
Yeah, the Debussy Fantasia
for piano and orchestra.
It's a C major. Yeah.
So the Ballade is Faure.
This is Ballade Faure. And this sucker is an F sharp major.
Yeah.
It's a lot of sharps. Take a look at this. This is published by International Music Company, edited by the American pianist Grant Johansson.
Ooh, Grant Johansson. I have a double CD of him playing a whole bunch of French music.
Yes.
He was really quite respected by the French people for his devotion to the French school of piano playing.
Yes. It took me 3 days to get through this entire score. 3 days. I mean, some of it was just so. It's difficult. It's so contrapuntally complex, and just all this leading around.
This is the original for piano solo.
It was originally for piano solo, and like I said, he must have liked it so much that he arranged it for piano and orchestra. Now, it must be noted that Faure was also a first-class organist. He eventually became a first-class organist, and had he wanted to, he could have had a career as a concert organist, but he didn't want to play the organ. He said, according to one of his colleagues, he once said that the organ just does not create the kind of nuances he wants to be expressive in his music, is what he said. And so that's why he stuck to the piano, because he was able to get what he wanted out of the piano.
I'm an organist. My dad was a really great organist. And I studied for a year. It was a requirement to have a second instrument at Wittenberg, very Germanic kind of school thing. So I studied piano, but then I studied organ and harpsichord for 3 total trimesters with Trudy Faber, who herself was a student of Gustav Leonhardt. And I did an organ recital, not a full one, but I played with other students, did some pieces. I was really impressed one time, because when my father and mother first met, Mom pretended to need organ lessons, and she went to the music store where Dad was teaching
Oh.
in order to take organ lessons with him. She was already an adept organist playing at the Methodist church.
Oh, sneaky.
Yeah. Well, I remember this toccata, I forget who it was by. It's a pre-Bach, pre-jazz Bach, but it wasn't Froberger, that's too far back, but there's somebody in between there.
Okay.
I don't remember, but
Could be Bucks up it.
Mom climbed up on the organ at home that Dad had. This big Conn 4-manual theater, but it could sound like a pipe organ.
Yeah.
It was electronic, but he also always had external pipes connected to it. And things. It was a big deal. I just was blown away. I knew that Mom had played organ in church, but she was an adept pianist.
Yep.
And a cousin of hers had studied at Indiana a long time ago and was equally famous as a concert pianist and concert violinist. And her name was Jenkins. That was the Mom's maiden name. I'd never seen my mom play. Really, and I'm still thinking about it now.
Yeah.
She climbed up on the organ.
Yeah.
She said, "Let me take the music," and she put it up there. She sight read my recital. So I mean, I got the music in my blood from both of my parents, clearly.
Yeah.
But the extraordinary thing to me about Mom was she never sat down and played the piano. She never played the organ. And I mean, I was the oldest kid, so I remember the farthest back.
Right.
I just remember oddly, I came up from Whitburn. I said, I've got to prepare this piece, and I still am trying to figure out how to use the stops and do certain things because it was still new to me. And I said, well, let's see it. She climbed up on the bench. She turned some things on, and poof, played the whole piece. Side read the sucker with the feet going too. And the feet thing is, I'm not a klutz. I'm better than I used to be. I'm starting to get eyes, especially in my left foot.
Yeah.
I can pretty much, I'd say I've got minimum 85% accuracy all the time.
Okay.
Sometimes it's better if I watch.
Well, I would love to see the look on your face when your mom did that.
I mean, I'm still thinking about that. Just that's a moment in my mind that sticks out. Wow. What was this woman capable of? I knew she was smart.
Yeah.
She was an intense reader.
Yeah.
If she had a choice between watching TV or reading, she'd go read a book. Big time. She's the one that encouraged us when we were kids, especially in the summer when we were in school. She'd take us to the library, and she had this kind of rule. You can borrow as many books as you want, given how many the library would let you take, which was pretty significant. It's upwards of a dozen books. But, she said, in 2 weeks, we're going to have to bring them back. You can't renew them. You need to read them. Mm-hmm. So whatever you can read within the 2 weeks, you can take as many as you want, but just make sure you read them all. We 3 kids go, it was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Dad worked hard, and he was relatively well paid as a middle level. He was a union guy, but he worked more in supervision and supervisory stuff at the International Harvester. We had a nice home, and we had birthday presents and Christmas presents and things, but I'd say we were somewhere in the middle of the middle class. Yeah. We never went on big vacations or stuff like that, and we weren't for scholarships and grants and fellowships and things like that. I could have never gone through college because Dad didn't have enough to put away. And then Mom worked later on for many years. About the time I was in 5th grade, I think she got her first job out of it. But she took us to the library, and she actually took us on a vacation one time. We went to SeaWorld, and we went to Stan Hewitt Hall in Akron. You know that place?
Yes, I've heard of it.
It was the home that was owned by the tire magnate, not the super famous tires, but the other name begins with the same letter. They're made up in Akron. Okay. It was a really cool house, but Paderewski had played the piano in their house. Ooh. He signed
He signed it?
Signed the inside of the piano. Holy That's John Paderewski. Mom took us for things like that. And she was, I mean, I have issues with Mom, very much so. It was not a, it was an abuse, physically punishing, abusive relationship. But I know now that my mom probably, no more, she's bipolar. And more on the depression than the manic side most of the time. And I don't know what happened to her. I think she may have been, I don't know where it happened or how it happened, but sexually abused or violated earlier in her life. So she's a wounded person. And I was there first and around it the longest. And my father chose to be absent in order to avoid conflict in the house. So he worked second shift a lot as we were kids. Went home the evening. And I probably took the brunt of Mom's bad moments and rage and things. It's pretty bad. I worked my way through it. You don't need to play any violins or anything for me. I think that the kind of person I am is, interestingly, because I turned those lemons into sunshine and lemonade.
Right.
Aspects of my character and my compassion, I think, runs very deep in me. My sympathy or even empathy for abused and wounded people, troubled people. So I've chosen to accept it as I was being in a situation and the recipient of a very wounded person's suffering. But on the other hand, in the good times, all of the intellectual and cultural and musical kinds of things. And, I mean, Dad was a trained musician, but he couldn't do it professionally. But he did play for the church and different things like that. But really, his mom. I mean, I love books.
Oh yeah.
I love going to museums and all that kind of stuff. I'm never bored. Because, oh my God, I could pull anything off the shelf here just to have a free moment. I'll pick this down and I'll read a little bit about this.
If you do get bored, a 5-page paper.
There you go. I'm sorry, how did I get into that? I don't remember, but it was about the organ stuff.
Yeah, the organ.
Yeah, so I played the organ, but I know what I was going to say. I'm now interestingly, the organist at a Lutheran church here in Columbus. That's relatively new in my life. I did a lot of piano, a lot of opera, a lot of theater, choral directing, and all that kind of stuff. And near the older part of my life, I became an organist. And occasionally I play the piano. There are somewhat more conservative Lutheran congregations, so they like the organ.
Yeah. And
I've gotten used to it because the emphasis for them is really the sacrament. It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the culmination of the whole thing. The sermon kind of leading towards that, but then there's the whole sacrament. But occasionally I'll play the piano, and then sometimes they like that actually when I do it. Yeah. But I've really learned the organ. When I play the organ, I feel like I'm conducting an orchestra, pulling out voices and things like that. And there's a certain verticality of music. I don't mean boring. There always needs to be a trajectory and a line in music.
Right.
But I mean more like straight strum pianos versus cross strum pianos. Okay? You have that kind of clarity, and there's different depending what stops you choose and things like that. Whereas the piano, I can be like Monet. Not to smear it, but to create impressions or suggestions or different aspects of a color that you can do with the piano that I don't get with the organ. Is a little bit more timbre and color specific, and it's kind of like what you got. Yeah, that's it. That's what you got. Yeah, piano is instantaneous. You can change things as quickly as you are able to, given your abilities. And I appreciate the two, and I think in a way, when I play the organ, it enhances my sense of balance, timbre, voicing, and counterpoint, things like that.
Yeah.
Where the pianos, I can take my brush and start to really create some interesting colors. And it's also as an emotionally expressive instrument. It's the way I think the piano is what the Chinese would call, what the Chinese with the tabletop zither, they play the, I forget the name for it, but I love the traditional Chinese Taoist type music that's written for the Kuchan, I forget what it's called. They referred to those in the past as philosopher musicians. That playing the instrument actually was a part of expressing philosophy by recreating the experiences and sounds of nature through music. And I think of the piano, and when I'm at it, I'm more of a philosopher, pianist. But as an organist, maybe a little, I'm not, but something closer to a theologian, pianist, as opposed to philosopher. Organ really has something about God implicitly in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I got
That's all right.
off on
That's all
that.
right. So, Ballad.
Are you?
So if you're done, I mean, if you have a concerto of some sort, no orchestra, consider Ballad.
Are you drawn to any of this music? Or want
Does
to
it?
play it?
I would love to play some of it.
I played some of the nocturnes.
I would love to try to learn this piece. This would make it wonderful.
And the ballads too.
Oh, the ballad.
Ballads. I played some of those. No.
Nocturnes or
What's
barcarolles?
the other orange barcarolles?
Barcarolles, yeah. Oh,
What's that thing?
This is a sonata for flute and piano, Opus 13. I think this was originally a violin piece. It was
See the melody. I'm not sure if I played this with somebody.
Paul Viardot.
Oh.
Yes, Paul Viardot.
Well, it would have
Viardot.
been Pauline Viardot's husband.
Yeah, possibly. Faure at one time had fallen in love with their daughter, Marianne Bardot. And for reasons unexplained, they were engaged, but she wound up breaking it off after a year.
I played this.
You have played
Yeah, it's been a long
Is
time.
it violin piano?
It originally was. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Originally for violin piano.
All right.
I did not play the flute. I played with the violinist.
Is it in the same key?
I think so. Yeah, it's both A major.
All right.
Yeah, this is the famous Opus 13. I got a recording of this, and it was weird. I went through a boring kind of period when just before I went to Madison, then while I was at Madison, because I played the C minor piano quartet, mostly because of Rubinstein's famous recording, and I love the piece. The whole thing I love. I love the rondo at the fourth movement, but da dee da dum, dee da da, ba dee da. Just this scale that pushes itself up through the octave, and this kind of it's like a Greek chorus where there's the primary statement and then the chorus reverberating or echoing what's being said. I love Rubinstein's performance. I think it's with the Guarneri Quartet. That's most of those later recordings I did that. I played it in Palo Alto, California, when I went to visit my aunties, and there was some talented amateur musicians. One was a judge, another one was an investor, another guy had been an inventor, sold some software kind of stuff to Apple or somebody and made a fortune. Very serious musicians. And then we read some music. I think there was, we read for fun after the concert was over, the Mendelssohn D minor trio.
Oh!
Harry pulled that. I said, let's do the trio. Can you play the trio? The Mendelssohn, I said, give it a shot. But I did okay.
Yeah.
Ended up breaking some things in the piano.
Oh, jeez.
So Mildred had, it was a nice instrument actually, but it was what do you call it, a console?
Yeah.
Upright kind of piano, and it had plastic elbows, the things that connect the wire to the actual inside. It was
Oh, that
plastic,
was
where
weird.
nowadays they're kind of a strong rubber kind of thing that holds them. And between reading some Grieg with them, I forget what that was, Grieg Violin Sonata.
There are 3 of them. Yes.
And then the Mendelssohn, the piano technician, had to come after that day. And he eventually, he came twice because I broke it again.
Oh gosh!
And then he just said, why don't you just let me put in the newer version? Because they were plastic from the 50s.
Ooh.
So they got kind of a little dry.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's probably why they cracked so easily. But they also had not experienced me up to that point. But she had new modern rubberized ones put in. And they were very sweet about it. She says, our boy, he's so strong. He's a strapping fellow, you know. And they called me then, I forget who it was, but one of their friends referred to me as Sir Marc, the piano crusher. Well, I did a big program, actually. I remember everything, but the first half was solo.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I started with, but I remember I played Masao Homa's Japanese composer I met. Cross mode. It was really difficult modern piece. Cross mode from the 1970s.
Wow.
Very Japanese, very out there kind of composition. But anyway, that first half I ended with Valley Doberman.
Oh.
That's how I kind of damaged their piano.
Oh, well, that would definitely do it.
And then the second half we did the G minor Mozart Piano Quartet and the C minor Faure.
Boy, you were doing some heavy lifting that day, huh?
Yeah, but you know, it was young.
Yeah.
Full of vim and vigor.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? Have we,
Not
we
for
have more
today.
time? Or,
Well, part of it's me talking so much again.
no, do you want me
I
to?
can save these until next week. If
Okay.
you want to keep going with
Want me
them.
to keep going?
What you got?
Okay, well,
Let's
all
not go too low, because I've discovered when I edit these things, however long the recording is,
Yeah.
I spend twice as much time editing it.
right.
So this
Okay.
last one was 2.5 hours. It was like 5.5
All right,
hours.
what time did you start? Do you remember?
2:30ish.
2:30ish?
Probably
Okay.
a little bit after.
All right. Well, I'll make this one quick then. All right. Okay. PSI goes to the movie.
Oh, and did you hear the music?
Did I hear the
Did you like it in the last show?
What show? Oh yeah, you did. You brought up. You
I did the PSI to the movie.
Yeah.
Lush.
Yeah, I saw it.
I was trying to look for a popcorn
Popcorn
gift
thing. Good.
to use as well, but I didn't find it.
It was very good. I mean, if you haven't seen it, check out it.
0018.
Yes.
It was just
Okay.
released this week.
So the movie we are going to talk about today is Ken Russell's
Ooh, one of those.
Music Lovers.
Who the hell? I don't know this.
Okay, this movie
Is
is
that the French lady?
it's I don't know,
Oh no, Glenda Jackson.
Glenda Jackson. It's-
Oh, this is Tchaikovsky.
This is Tchaikovsky.
Oh, now come on.
Yes, Ken Russell. The Music Lovers. This is
So
about
this is supposed
Tchaikovsky.
to be Tchaikovsky.
That is supposed to be Tchaikovsky.
And are they lovers in this film?
Well, they sort of are, but no. But you know the story. Okay, you know
Yeah.
Tchaikovsky's life, right?
Yeah, but do they present it realistically in the show?
As close as they can get it.
1970.
Okay, as close as they can get it.
1970.
Yeah,
Wow, Glenda Jackson was a
yeah.
little figure that kid.
But yeah, you'll be. There's quite a few surprises in here. I mean, I didn't know historically. I mean, this movie is supposed to be taken as any references, as a sort of a reference as to what Tchaikovsky's life was like, or even the people within his circle were like.
Well, he was lucky because this lady was a countess,
Yeah.
right?
Who?
The woman.
The woman? I
What's
don't
her
know
name?
if she was a. I don't know if she was a countess.
Isn't this the woman that paid for him, right? She gave him money and stuff, support.
No, that was Madame von Meck.
Oh, this is not fun.
This is not von Meck.
Oh, so who's this lady supposed to
I don't know who this lady was, but it was a marriage of, well, they got married because, well, you know, there was suspicion of his, you know, his preferences, and so they decided to hide that by getting him married in in this movie.
Ooh,
So,
Richard Chamberlain plays
Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky.
And luckily for us, there's plenty of piano music in this movie.
I mean, what do we really know about Tchaikovsky? I mean, what does one know about 19th century typical homosexual culture? That probably depended also on what country and what culture you were in. Like, I mean, also, especially the class.
Yeah.
If you were high class, you could probably get away with stuff more than middle class. And then the low class sometimes were the appetizers for the high class.
Yeah.
They preyed on them. But I don't know. I think about it. You know, Tchaikovsky, I've seen so many things written about him. I remember who's the Susan McClary. You know who I'm talking about?
Susan McClary.
Susan McClary was very famous back in the 70s, or especially 80s anyway.
Yeah.
By then, later on, I was in, when I really got into knowing about Susan McClary's writing, she was I think she was in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and I was doing my doctorate out in Boulder. Susan M.C., and little c, then like Scottish Mac, Clary, but just M.C. She was one of the early leaders of the Feminist Musicology movement. And seriously, I mean, they took on Tovey and various kind of people. You know, Tovey, I think it's Tovey. It's an English musicologist. I'm thinking it's Tovey.
Daniel or David?
Daniel Tovey, isn't it? He's one of them that explains that the reason that Tchaikovsky's music is weak and effeminate is because he relies so much on the fourth and uses 4/1 cadences instead of 5/1 cadences. And then he drew certain criticisms about Tchaikovsky that, no, he wasn't in the same league as Beethoven.
Right.
Or even frankly Brahms. Brahms and Tchaikovsky knew about each other. They weren't one another's favorite people. But I think they respected each other relatively, not just composers, more or less. But Donald Tovey.
Donald Tovey.
I'm pretty sure it was Tovey who she really went after. That was like her dissertation that got her started, became her first big book. And she was looking at what eventually was arguing with these ideas which were established by patriarchic musicology field, where they made these decisions. Because, you know, we have feminine cadences and masculine cadences. Masculine is the 5/1.
Yeah.
And the feminine cadence is the 4/1. You know? And there's a lot made of that. And then, you know, Beethoven is like the boy with the steel girder.
5/1, 5/1.
Yeah. A big bowling pair sack, you know, bowling ball sack. And then Tchaikovsky was looked at especially as that kind of a different orientation composer, but then there were slides made about it because there were things that were probably known, things like that. But, you know, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
The British ruled the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, certainly during the whole Victorian era, you know, rule Britannia, Britain rules the waves. They were the sun never sets on the British Empire. Literally, they were all over the place. And then, you know, if I mentioned Oscar Wilde, who was in prison for a period of time, he was too open at the time. And even though he's from, I don't know if he was from super high class, but he eventually migrated into that territory, and he may have assumed that he was safe.
Yeah.
And also pushed the boundaries because he was doing a lot of social commentary through his creative work. And it was too much for him eventually, and he got put away for a while. And it hurt him afterwards in certain ways, but I remember seeing some other things. You know, that wonderful movie they made about the Benedict Cumberbatch plays the role of the guy who created the ability to break the Nazi code in England.
Oh, I remember that.
They did that movie, the something
Yeah.
machine, right?
Yeah.
But he created this machine, and he figured it out very interestingly, so well that they knew what the Nazis were doing way earlier. I mean, like at least for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
They let it play out because they were afraid that if they started showing up every time when the Nazis were doing something, Nazis are smart boys.
Yeah.
They figure out, damn it, they broke the code. They know how to read our code.
Yeah.
And instead, they played it like a chess game for at least the last 2 years of the war. The British intelligence especially played it out so that they allowed themselves to suffer and lose in certain places here and there. But we're playing a slow game to win the board, which of course they eventually did. But the fellow, the scientist, famously to his female friend, he was special.
Yeah.
You know, she knew. I don't know that people were as comfortable with it coming in the Victorian and Edwardian period.
Yeah.
Especially, let's say, middle class and even, I don't know, with the lower class. It's hard to tell. Because, you know, pirates and boys out at sea. So, but the upper class is a whole different animal.
Yeah.
But he, I forget what they call the thing. It's something machine that broke the Nazi code. I'll look this terms up. But after it was all done, and actually they didn't make known, the British kept the fact that they had broken the code. Because the Nazis never knew that they did.
Yeah.
And they apparently didn't make it public until the late 60s. More than 20 years after the war was over, did they even come out and say what had really happened, and this is how it happened. Yeah. Because then all of a sudden there's the Iron Curtain and all this, and this Cold War started up, and they figured, well, we better keep our mouths shut. We're not sure what to do. But the sad thing was the scientist guy who came up with the machine.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a computer. He created the first computer, big, huge thing, in a big building. And it was all based on mathematics and things, and we worked it out. He was forced to get cut off the balls.
Yeah.
I forget you call that.
Neutered.
Because some people at the time had found that when you did that, the guys had took their prowess and their urgency away. And then they also connected that with some kind of animalistic aspect of homosexual sex.
Yeah.
This urgency to do it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm not sure if they cut it. They didn't cut it off. But they did medical, what do you call the procedure when they did that? Like the castrati.
Castrati.
When they cut off your testicles. I forget them.
I
I'm sorry, I forget the word. Maybe better we don't say it all the time.
Yeah.
But he was castrated.
Castrated. Yeah.
So he was medically castrated.
Yeah.
And he was also always very sensitive, very fussy guy. But in the war, they knew he was brilliant. And they knew he was onto something. Let him be himself. But after it was done, he had a bad end to his life. And part of it was this bullshit.
Yeah.
And then it's a magnificent film. I love Benedict Cumberbatch. He does a tremendous role with that. Why are we talking? Oh, because of that.
Can I show him the movie?
Yeah, please. I don't know. I honestly don't know enough about Tchaikovsky. I mean, I love a lot of his music and such. I know quite a bit of his music. Not real. I've never done a big study of his life.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what the stories are about how he lived and such. He wasn't married. Was he? I don't think so.
Well, according to this,
he was early on it for a period, but
it was later period. I mean, when he was younger, I think he was.
You know, traditionally in ancient Greece, back in the days of Pythagoras and stuff like that, it's very interesting that homosexuality was commonly practiced. the stories you hear, the schools for the men. Of course, those were the upper class boys and things. But what would usually happen in ancient Greece, Robert Graves writes about this, and what's his name? I have some of their books talk about the ancient Greeks, for example, Greek Athenian culture. Necessarily, men would engage with women from their later teens until about 30, because they had to procreate. They needed to have children, hopefully sons. And then certain of them, especially the ones who would start schools, that was a very common way in the upper class to educate these people. If you'd shown a real predilection and had a real mind for various subjects, mathematics and rhetoric and various things like that, you'd start a school. Well, and the practice was a lot of homosexual activity through the teens and with the teachers and all that kind of stuff. It was not looked at in any kind of bad light, as is common in our time. But there was that period of time when the women would be necessary to be mothers, but then also, once the guys kind of went off into their own kind of world, the women had their world, but they were also responsible for maintaining property and status of the family and the culture and stuff. You know, there was no shame in the man being homosexual, because it was just part of the culture, and people practiced that way. But what's his name? Oscar Wilde is probably one of the most famous moments in that period of coming out of the 19th and the early 20th century. So the Victorian into the Edwardian period, and then there's the Tsar Nicholas. The Victorian culture had a worldwide impact on human culture, in the West especially. And I've actually read things and figured some stuff out of myself, that it was due to the extreme rigidness and suppressive behaviors, and rigid and censoring kind of behaviors about public, the way you conduct yourself in public.
Yeah.
This led to the kind of deep emotional repression that made it possible for Freud to discover a whole new field of science. Because what he was basically doing was digging up repressed emotions having to do with subject matter that was you don't talk about. You know, homosexuality, mommy lust, and all these things which are now considered in some ways part of natural human behavior in a way, but misunderstood, and then perhaps in some cases mispracticed. But my impression, for what I've known about his personal life, because there was a Russian film I saw about him. You going to talk about that?
Yeah, it's called Tchaikovsky.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have it somewhere.
You do?
I got to dig it out though somewhere.
I do think he did have a wife, wasn't he? But did she last the whole time? Or?
No, she did. She wound up, I believe she wound up, committed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, she had this thing about being significant among artists.
Oh, that's right.
You know.
You're right.
And so she wound up having a bunch of these affairs.
Profligate, that's right. Well, part of it was because Peter wasn't, what do they give her enough Peter?
Yeah.
Enough of Peter to please her.
Yeah.
But Madame von Meck was older than him, too.
Yeah, and Tchaikovsky was not the only musician that she supported.
No.
She also supported Debussy.
I think I heard that, yeah.
So, I mean, she was very much into the arts.
Very interesting person to study, probably.
Yeah. But would you like to know the musicians, the roster in this sucker?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
The Music Lovers, Ken Russell Film. Here is the roster. They brought in big guns here. London Symphony Orchestra plays the orchestra. Andre Previn is the conductor.
Previn's director.
Yes. The pianist, Rafael Orozco.
I know the name.
Yeah.
He's
from Spain.
He's in a a mixed LP collection of pianists.
Yeah. Rafael Orozco. He is from Spain. Born 1946, died in 1996. The guy was only 50 years old.
He plays Tchaikovsky.
He plays the Tchaikovsky and a bunch of solo pieces and everything too. But he is the pianist chosen to do all the piano work in this. So,
anybody else? Was that it?
That was it.
I was just remembering, I don't think I finished when I was getting off of my tangent, talking about Susan McClary. We had to kind of look into this because in the academic world, especially as far as musicology is concerned, feminist musicology was really beginning to assert itself in a way challenging preconceived or preordained explanations of even music, why music was, and then making the extrapolations. I mean, the patriarchy was responsible for that, about what music represented in terms of admirable human qualities or not admirable human qualities. And you might look her up because there's a lot of great early writing, and then she was like kind of the mentor for a number of ladies, and I also believe more homosexually oriented men who may have been influenced by her work. I think he's very open, and I don't feel bad about this, but I knew a guy, he's a Quaker, and I don't know where he is now, but he's a musicologist at Madison. Really remarkable guy, wonderful fellow. We used to take the bus together, and he was a bit older than me. He was a young professor, and I was in my master's degree. It was probably 10 years difference or something, but he was quite a brilliant, I mean, really brilliant. He'd written some great works and stuff, and it was along the same kinds of lines in terms of expanding considerations. Because, you know, the Groves Dictionary, I was just reading about this recently. Even 1980 versus their 2000 version. And what I have is the 1980 edition, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Which is quite more progressive along the way than famously back in the 30s. There was one where Liszt had like about this much of a an article in it, you know, just a
Rachmaninoff even
smaller.
like a paragraph.
I mean, just this British, you know, dismissive attitudes. And now, I mean, Liszt is a huge part of the 1981. All the pages of pages. He was a prolific composer.
Oh, absolutely.
With the Searle numbers, they go up into the hundreds.
Yeah.
Way in the hundreds.
Oh, way in the
600s at least, or 700s.
So.
There's things about Tchaikovsky, I just say, that are very Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
What I think is different, what I really feel about him, I mean, well, of course, not a ton of stuff, and he is somebody that, to my mind, you write, oh, that's Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
If you don't know the pieces, you can kind of figure it out, but he only wrote 6 symphonies, and there's a few other works, and there's 3 famous ballets or something. But the way he tends to write with the orchestra is strings versus the winds. It's like, it's this counter kind of voicing going on. And they treat the winds a little bit more, in my mind, he does, a little bit more like winds in a concert band, you know, with the way they play together and with each other. And it's not strictly that they're not mixed together, of course they are. But then, of course, Rachmaninoff is very different. I mean, it's really thoroughly mixed and integrated kind of writing. But that, and then the business with the cadences, there is a preference for plagal cadences, another word for them, feminine, or subdominant to tonic cadences. Or movements like that.
I was told it was the Amen cadence.
The church. That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because the Russian Orthodox Church was hugely important to the people and nationalistic, and played a huge role with the Tsar Nicholas family and everything. That's very interesting because there might be a connection like that with Tchaikovsky and Faure.
Yeah.
the influence of the church music on their own music. I never thought of that till just now. This is what he said today. The concerto was just an extraordinary creation. I know you played some of your solo piano music.
Which
Just
one?
like
Tchaikovsky?
Seasons. Kind of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, I played some of it.
I don't like it.
You don't like it? Oh. Have you ever tried the Romance in F minor?
Yeah.
No?
I mean, in general, the one piece that I do like is None But the Lonely Heart. The song. Dee da da dee da dum, da 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 dum. They did the movie called None But the Lonely Heart.
Exactly,
With Cary Grant.
Yeah.
One of his best dramatic roles.
Okay.
He plays kind of a grown-up man out on the streets, kind of a tricky-dicky kind of guy, making money here inside. Totally devoted to his mom, who still lives in tenement housing and stuff. And oh my God, that's a weeper.
Oh, it's
because his mom finally dies and stuff. Oh my God, it's an amazing role that Cary Grant does, and the music is perfect for that. Again, there's something weird about not all of them, because isn't the one of dum bum 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 ba da dee da dum
Number 6.
bum bum ba. The Sixth Symphony is really quite interesting, but then there's the Fifth and that famous 5/4 weird, almost waltzy like.
Yeah, that's a number 6 as well.
But there's an odd
it's in 5/4.
number beats in the Fifth Symphony too, isn't there?
The Fifth Symphony is in G major. It's dun da da da. Oh, it's in E minor. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dun da 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 dun.
But isn't there a dance?
And then there's another one.
No.
With da 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 dee.
Yes, that's the slow one. What's after that? The scherzo. Doesn't it go in a odd numbered?
I'm pretty.
It's like 7
I'm pretty sure.
measure or something.
I'm
It's
not
4 and
sure,
3.
but I'm sure. I'm pretty sure because number 6 has 5 movements. It's not 4.
Yeah, it's 5/4, right?
Yeah.
How's that movement going?
I can't. Da 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 da. Something like that. It's in 5/4. It's got a triplet in it somewhere in the theme, the main theme.
I think all you got to do really to compare the two guys, really see the difference in their musical language, their sense of ideas. One was I like this idea that the Russian what do you call it, Orthodox Church?
Yeah.
Because their stuff there's no organ that I know of in traditional Russian music. It's all male choruses.
Yeah.
And those Russians sing, almost like Tibetan monks.
Yeah.
And then the Catholic French Church with a lot of organ and, again, male choruses. That might explain part of what Tchaikovsky had in his ear and in his cultural perspective. But I would just say get a nice collection. I like a lot of different. I'm actually thinking, to recommend Abbados, 4 Brahms symphonies, for example. There's other ones I like very much, wonderful performances, but it is. And then Previn was a great interpreter of Russian music.
Oh yeah.
One of the first 2 CDs I bought was the Second Symphony of Rachmaninoff.
Absolutely.
With the symphony
That's
or
a
the
good
Philharmonic. I'm not sure.
That is a good one.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And it's with the full score. It's the original stuff, not the chopped up stuff.
Yeah, I used to have it on cassette tape, and then my tape player chewed up the damn thing. He got it. Oh yeah, he did.
And the emotion and everything. It's a magnificent performance. I'd say if you can get some of the Tchaikovsky, and 1, 2, and 3, let's say, are probably not as important as 4, 5, and 6 of Tchaikovsky, especially 5 and 6. But if you listen to the Tchaikovsky symphonies and listen to the Brahms symphonies, you'll hear from the beginning a very different orientation. I mean, it's not fair initially because Brahms didn't write his first symphony until he was over 50 years old.
Yeah.
Tchaikovsky was working on it before that. So that's why 1, 2, and 3 are a little bit more classic-y, youthful works.
Yeah.
And then he begins to explore, more truly romantic and fully realized and mature kind of understandings of how he uses the orchestra. especially in 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Bernstein's good.
Bernstein's good.
Good interpreter. But then you'd really see, because we talked a little bit, today then about Faure being part of the French school and
Yeah.
how that's so different from the German or the Russian school.
Yeah.
If we were to compare, Brahms and Tchaikovsky knew about each other. They were contemporaries. And I think, didn't they meet one time or something?
No, I don't believe they ever meet, but you sent me a site, a link of composers making insults to each other.
Oh, yes.
And Brahms and Tchaikovsky definitely did not like each other.
No.
I mean, there was definitely, more so, I think Tchaikovsky was a little more intense with how much he didn't like Brahms' music.
One of them was a little bit more
crass. Yeah.
Yeah, or less prone to be public about their feelings. But, Tchaikovsky in and of himself, he was quite successful. He came over to the United States and conducted when
Hans von Bülow
played the Tchaikovsky B-flat concerto with the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
The conductor was
Tchaikovsky. Yeah.
They did that performance. Can you imagine that? Von Bülow and Tchaikovsky doing the composer's famous concerto over here in America.
Yeah.
Brahms never came to America. No. Brahms was not a big traveler. Once he made his way down from Hamburg to Vienna, I think the farthest he went was out into the countryside in Austria for summer breaks. He seldom went anywhere.
It is 5:05.
Oh, well, we got a big one today. Then.
Yeah, we did get a big one. Hey, folks, if you really enjoyed our content today, and did we do a lot of talking today?
That's me.
Give us a thumbs up. Punch that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode.
I think I saw the numbers. Facebook, we've got 61 followers.
Yeah. Wow.
YouTube, I thought it said 47.
Something like that. Yeah.
So somebody's watching this stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's wonderful. Well, come back again, folks. I feel a big surprise coming in the next couple episodes.
We're going to do that.
Yes, we are.
At the end of the month.
End of the month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I would encourage people to maybe look into that.
What, the book?
Yeah, tell them about it.
Okay.
It's the basic principles.
The basic principles of piano playing by Joseph.
Pianoforte playing.
Pianoforte playing. Okay, pianoforte playing by Joseph Levine. You can get a copy from Dover.
Dover still publishes it for $7. But chances are you could go on eBay and find a little old copy.
Yeah, you could.
It's very interesting, but we're going to study it ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we're going to devote the last Thursday of the month, the 30th, I think, to trying to talk about, during that show, what he's saying in there. Yeah. It's going to be focused on that.
Yeah, hopefully we could go
So if you want to study it beforehand and read it, The Basic Principles of Pianoforte Playing by Joseph Levine, Lhevine.
Yes. Forward by Rosina.
Yeah, by his wife.
Yeah. Okay, folks. Have a good week.
It was kind of fun.
It was fun.
I learned a lot.
I did too.
This
is Marc.
I didn't know. I'm Marc.
I'm Elmer.
And this is PSI Piano Scene Investigations.
Later. Oh, it was wonderful.
Okay.
Later, folks.
See ya.